But in addition, the infrastructure of the industrial age, oil platforms, oil tankers. Our world is one where our energy demands have bound us to oil production. One that drives us to drill and extract in the coldest, most remote, most fragile regions of the earth. The icy wildernesses of the Arctic are now a scene of record oil production. And with this production comes consequences. Thousands of oil spills every year. Massacring shorebirds, eviscerating fish populations, and costing billions of dollars to attempt to remediate. And as promising as renewable sources of energy are, we won't be getting away from oil anytime soon. And so we need new strategies to clean up these oil spills before they turn into disaster. So what are our options? Well, there are mechanical approaches, booms and nets you can deploy on the oil. We used to gather all the oil together for recovery or burning. But these are super slow, and we have to act fast. There are dispersants, which we can dissolve in the oil into the ocean. Super fast, problem solved, right? Except all that dissolved oil and the dispersants themselves are pure poison, and you just end up killing everything in the ocean. Let's use a chemical herder instead. Deployed by helicopter, they're super fast. They exploit the awesome power of surface tension to gather all the oil together into a thick slick, from which then it can either be recovered or burned. The only problem is that all of these dispersants are incredibly toxic to marine life. So their fish aren't being killed by the oil itself, they're being killed by the dispersant during the cleanup operation. So that's where I come in. I'm working on algae-derived chemical herders. Good for fish. We start with algae, the stuff exploding out of our patented fish flown helicopter. And inside that is a molecule called phytol, which is the stuff exploding out of the algae. We take phytol and give it a very polar head group, meaning that part of the molecule really likes water. And the rest of the molecule doesn't like water. We combine this turns phytol into a very powerful chemical herder. So then we create model oil spills in the laboratory, both big and small, and we deploy our herder to these oil spills. As we hope, drives the oil together into a thick slick. Now we can ask the big question. Is it thick enough to burn, thick enough to remove, thick enough for our bird with the flaming torch to burn the oil spill? Well, the benchmark for a commercial herder is about 3 millimeters. And we found that we can go even thicker, greater than 5 millimeters with our algae-derived herders, meaning a more effective, more environmentally friendly cleanup operation. So while there may be only so much oil on the ground, let's ensure there's no oil to be found in the ocean on scale.
Thank you, Tana. So first, official trivia question. What is the Rio Grande called in Mexico?
Big River.
Rio Grande. I heard that. It could also be called the Rio Grande del Norte. The dual name stems from colonial era confusion about whether the upper and lower courses of the river were connected, so they named it twice, and then they're like, oh, okay. Good for that. There was some concern about the candy distribution, because I was like, am I actually supposed to throw candy at the audience? I feel like there might be liability issues. So we decided on a lateral distribution method, which hopefully will be less hazardous for all concerned parties. Good news, with all of the catering coming through, Slade Street is also going to be responsible for lunch after this event. So I saved a little bit of room for burritos because they've got a pretty amazing food for us. And so that should be pretty awesome. And our second presenter is Zachary Gibson from the Air Force Research Laboratory Space Vehicles Directorate, presenting Next Stop, Survivable Spacecraft, Accelerated Aging of Spacecraft Materials.
Mars, to form a new colony is the last hope of survival for the human race. But your spacecraft wasn't built to last. So the outer insulation starts to discolor, crack, and peel away, leaving you exposed to the harsh space environment. Either, but I have been on my way to the grocery store in an unfamiliar place. My GPS failed me, so I got lost. Both of these issues rely on understanding materials in space. so that we have survivable, reliable spacecraft, whether that's for interplanetary space travel or GPS satellites. One key issue is spacecraft charging. I don't mean like charging your phone. For example, if you rub your feet on the carpet, you build up an excess of charge. You can walk up to your friend and shock them, dumping that charge. Satellites don't have friends. When they build up an excess of charge, they arc and spark and shock themselves. Therefore, it's critical to understand the electrical properties of these materials. Now, children are much more resilient than adults. They can topple over and then bounce right back up. When I was an adult, I can hardly stand stubbing my toe. Analogously, spacecraft materials are often measured for pristine or young materials. But when they're exposed to the harsh space environment, those materials' properties drastically change, aging them. So we need to understand the nuances of aging so that we can watch our spacecraft grow old, gracefully grow old into their golden years. We can simply watch them grow old. We love watching our children do so, but that takes a lifetime. What if we don't have that one? Well, then we need to artificially accelerate aging so that we can conduct rapid testing in the laboratory. My research investigates the effects on dose rate of aging in electrically insulating spacecraft materials. This is because dose rate can have a drastic impact on the results. Imagine you're slowly smoking a pork shoulder on a sunny summer afternoon. You tenderly pull it for a delicious sandwich versus trying to microwave that same pork shoulder. Clearly, there can be stark differences when energy is applied at different rates. Specifically, I aged materials and then I deposited charge via an electron gun, and then I measured the internal charge distributions with the pulsed electroacoustic method. I then applied an electric field to poke and prod and probe the charge transport properties of the materials. When they were aged more slowly, a single peaked charge distribution was observed that was non-responsive to poking and prodding. When aged a bit faster, two non-responsive peaks appeared. When aged even more rapidly, then the material behaved more like a conductor charge sloshing around within the bulk. These drastic differences in material properties are very important for designing more reliable, resilient spacecraft that don't fail us when we need them, so we can get where we're going, whether that's colonizing Mars or getting to the grocery store. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zachary. Our next trivia question. This one's a little harder. How deep is the Rio Grande Gorge near Taos, New Mexico? I will be super impressed if anybody knows this. I can go with kind of order of magnitude, closeness, if you want to give this down.
800 feet.
Yes, 800. I didn't know it was multiple choice. It was you're like, wow. I didn't know that variable. Well played, Los Alamos. The Rio Grande Gorge stretches for about 50 miles and is a key feature of the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument. The gorge reaches depths of around 800 feet in some areas and showcases dramatic geological formations, revealing millions of years of Earth's history through exposed volcanic rock and sediment lakes. I'm kind of a visit. Also, if you should happen to fall into the gorge, we have members of the mountain rescue team, search and rescue crew here. So Andreas will help pull you back up. Our third speaker is Aaron Bales from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, presenting the Renewable Energy Rumble, finding the right catalyst for sustainable carbon fiber production.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between, welcome to the main event. In this corner, we have our reigning champion, the undefeated Rex, the dinosaur. And in this corner, we have our underdog, the upstart, Mike, the microbe. This is the admittedly unlikely matchup you don't want to miss. It's also an apt metaphor for my research. Did you know that even if we all switched to driving electric vehicles overnight, we'd still be using huge amounts of oil every day? Petroleum products are everywhere. The synthetic fibers in your clothes, the chapstick in your backpack, the Legos that you played with as a kid, and much, much more. Finding a way to replace petroleum in the commodity supply chain is one of the greatest challenges of our time and one of the toughest to tackle. It's really hard to find an alternative that's cheap and abundant while still being effective and environmentally friendly. Well, in my group, we found an alternative to take down dinosaur-based fossil fuels, the humble microbe. We've engineered common bacteria to consume sugar and produce chemical precursors that can then be used to make all the products currently made using oil. This means that we can replace petroleum with biomass that would otherwise go to the landfill. My work focuses on adapting a large-scale process currently being used to convert petroleum into carbon fiber, a critical component in bikes, cars, and aircraft. This process is called thermocatalysis, and it involves flowing our chemical precursors into a reaction vessel containing the catalyst and heating everything up to make our carbon fiber. The catalyst is there so we can use lower temperatures, but the conventional catalyst with a petroleum-based approach is expensive and it doesn't work well with our new biologically sourced feedstock, so it needs to be reoptimized. I've been exploring new catalysts based on cheap materials like iron, titanium, and zirconium, so that when the time comes, it'll be economical to scale up this process. And once we're successful, it'll be a total knockout win for renewable energy resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Our next trivia question. Which geologic feature created the Rio Grande? This one is apparently not multiple choice, so. Ooh, absolutely, the Rio Grande Rifts, marvelous. The deep scenic canyon carved by the Rio Grande River in northern New Mexico. It stretches for about 50 miles and is a key feature of the Rio Grande National Monument. I feel like we got that second one copy from the previous one. But we'll say that 800 feet is still impressive and there are still dramatic features if you would like to go visit them. They are apparently also, you can see the Rio Grande Rifts in play by looking at the Rio Grande Gorge.
The West Mesa, all the volcanism that we have here is also part of Rio Grande, and the uplift of the Sandian Mountains.
So, you can definitely weigh in on the trivia for this side. I appreciate the assist. So, geologists. Well, I like this. You know how it is. Okay. Any other geological features that we should be sure to observe while we're out and about visiting New Mexico?
For New Mexico, a fun fact here, Mexico is second. Lots of things like the Vice Caldera, there's Mount Taylor, and even just the little volcano, bridge type volcanoes that are similar to the kind of volcanoes that we have here in Albuquerque.
So if you've ever wanted a junior volcanology degree, apparently taking New Mexico is absolutely the way to go. Calderas and all of the fun things. Just remember to pack water and good shoes. All right. Our fourth speaker is Aaron Thornton from the Air Force Research Laboratory Directed Energy Directorate, presenting Rainbow Connection.
In a time of increasing polarization and division, I think it's more important than ever to examine points of view very different than our own. For example, As a physicist in the Air Force in 2024, you might expect that I don't really have a lot in common with those peace and love hippies of the 1960s. I'm talking to you today, for example, in pretty conservative business attire, not some fantastic tie-dye dress. And let's just say my drug testing requirement ensures that I have a different form of recreation than what might have been enjoyed at Woodstock. But where we do have a connection is our shared love of rainbows. So that leads me to wonder, what if the Air Force could learn to harness the power of rainbows? So back to my Air Force hat. In directed energy physics, as was spoiled a little earlier, we examine ways to defend against enemy attack by using the power of the electromagnetic spectrum to defeat enemy systems. In other words, and more specifically, we use high-powered lasers and microwaves to provide an overwhelming amount of signal, causing systems to fail, similar to ways that a power surge might fry your TV at home. Frequently, it's really important for us to know what is in the air that we're sending these signals through, as it can kind of affect how well our signals are able to get from point A to point B. Through LiDAR, lasers are really good at doing atmospheric sensing, especially when you're looking for something specific like methane gas. However, if you're wanting to scan for a whole bunch of things at once, things get really tricky. And this is because each particle responds to different colors or wavelengths. So in order to scan for a bunch of things in the sky at one time, you have to rapidly switch between wavelengths and lasers. This is where my research comes in. Instead of looking into using a whole bunch of different lasers, I'm looking into ultra short pulse lasers, which emit such high intensity light that our single color pulse gets pretty groovy as it propagates and separates into an entire rainbow, providing all of the colors that we need. So again, instead of having to use many different laser systems to make many different colors, I have one system that propagates one color light that then generates all of the light for all of the colors in the atmosphere to do our sensing. Right now, I'm working on using spectrometers to better study all of the different types of rainbows we're able to generate using lasers at different central wavelengths. And the research and data that I'm generating will be used to better identify and then compensate for those particles in our path. And in the end, I think we had a lot to learn from the 50s. And through my work with ultra short pulse lasers and rainbows, I hope someday I'll find it. The rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, the DoD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. Our next trivia question. Which national park does the Rio Grande run through? This is all our forestry people can weigh in on this one.
Big Bend.
Yeah, Big Bend National Park. Well done. The Rio Grande runs through Big Bend National Park in Texas, where it forms the southern boundary and carves through dramatic canyons like Santa Elena, offering opportunities for rafting and hiking. It also flows through the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument to New Mexico, where the river cuts through the Rio Grande Gorge, showcasing more stunning landscapes and wildlife. You're like, after this, we're all gonna have to go for a hike or kayak or some version of outdoor adventuring. So, my dogs would totally have sponsored this trivia. Okay. Any interesting livestock or wildlife that you have encountered since visiting Albuquerque for this particular adventure?
Roadrunners.
Roadrunners are fantastic. Much smaller than advertised by the Acme Corporation and Hanover. Thank you so much. Our fifth speaker is Michelle Bester from Sandia National Laboratories, presenting Decoding the Canopy.
That's negative mindset. Only you can prevent wildfires.
But despite these warnings, we continue to witness the devastating and far-reaching effects wildfires can have on our communities. And sadly, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. In fact, over the past decade, we've seen a steady increase in the number and intensity of wildfires. Since January, New Mexico has experienced 8 large wildfires, causing over $1.2 billion in damage. 2 of those fires displaced over 8,000 people. One cause of wildfire that is often overlooked is our electric grid. Where the tree falls onto the line or a faulty line sparks into nearby vegetation, the interaction between these can ignite and spread wildfires. In addition, once the wildfire is already in progress, burning trees can pose a risk to critical infrastructure that can potentially cause extensive power outages. So maybe Smoky Bay needs a little extra help. That's where my research comes in. My aim is to reduce wildfire threats to and from the electric grid using computer models and simulations by combining satellite imagery, field measurements with cool tech like AI and LiDAR, which captures the world in 3D. I'm able to develop accurate, high-resolution models to better inform fire simulations everywhere in the state. Why vegetation models? Well, without vegetation, fires wouldn't have much to work with. No trees, no shrubs, no fields, no fires, right? Since we don't want to chop down the few trees we have in New Mexico or destroy our Canyon juniper forests, it's important that we manage and monitor these. The more we know about what's out there, the better we can predict fire behavior. But mapping trees is not as easy as it sounds. Some characteristics are straightforward, but others can be a little bit more tricky. For example, which exact tree poses a risk, or how much biomass fuel is within a given tree canopy. Current methods measuring these are inconsistent, very by location, and often at such a large scale with low resolution, we can't really tell what's happening. But with our innovative approach, we can develop these detailed vegetation models to better inform fire simulations, to tell us where vegetation management can be done proactively and efficiently. And what's even really exciting, that these models have broad applications that can be used to further reduce the number and intensity of wildfires in our communities. Make this work a little bit easier. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Our next trivia question. Which of the following rivers is not a tributary to the Rio Grande? The Pecos River, the San Juan River, Rio Chama, or Rio Salado? That is actually still one of the tributaries. So we're looking for the one that is not a tributary. It's kind of a trick question. San Juan. San Juan is not a tributary of the Rio Grande. Well played. Thank you. Yeah. Our sixth presenter is Gonzalo Cisneros from Los Alamos National Laboratory, presenting Hearing the Unseeable, the Silent Symphony of Structural Safety.
Did you hear that? It wasn't actually the sound of silence. It was ultrasound, beyond the human range of hearing. Do you know that sound that we can't hear can be used to listen to silent objects like materials to help us understand how structurally sound or robust they are? Sorry. Sorry. These guys are putting too much pressure on us, you know? Did you hear that? It wasn't actually the sound of silence. It was ultrasound beyond the human range of hearing. Do you know that sound that we can't hear can be used to listen to silent objects like materials to help us understand how structures sound or robust they are? For example, the shape of commercial airplanes has been optimized for decades. Old and new planes look almost identical. The real difference is in the materials they use to build them. Planes from 2024 are 30% lighter than planes from the 90s. Since metals, which are heavy and corrode, are replaced by lightweight kind of fiber composites. These materials are shaped and put through a temperature and pressure cycle to harden them for high performance durability. But how do we know that a particular plate component, say the wing, is properly baked, or as we call it, cured? One way to test it would be to break the wing in half and see how much force it took to break it. But that would be pretty practical because we have a lot of broken wings and no flying airplanes. That's where my work comes in. I specialize in listening materials talk with sounds that humans can't hear. My time-bending device generates ultrasonic waves that pass through the material without abandoning it. Then detects how the material alters the sound waves. If the material is fully hardened, the sound waves pass smoothly and fast. However, just like a cake, we cannot see without breaking it if the inside of the wing is underbaked. But we can hear it. This time, the sound waves will be jagged and slowly. My job is to analyze these sound waves in real time to certify that each plane component has the optimal properties to safely be used in higher demanding applications. The third advantage of this technique is that we're saving material costs and reducing the amount of waste that occurs during the testing process. This is very important because these broken wings cannot be recycled. Specifically, if we want to achieve a sustainable research in manufacturing, breaking these one-time use materials is not a choice. The even bigger advantage of this technique is that it can be used in the field. So if we want to know how the wing is holding up after 3,000 or 10,000 flights, we can test it again and again, ensuring that every key component remains at peak safety, which is essential if we all want to visit our families for Thanksgiving. And crucially, this technique can be used to characterize any material that can't be broken, like the one used to build skyscrapers or this building. So to ensure our safety and the reliability of our planes and infrastructure, let's keep listening to these novel materials with our hearings. Thank you.
Our next trivia question, how long is the rear grid? Again, they've given you convenient benchmarks. 1,800 to 1,900 miles, 1,900 to 2,000 miles, 2,000 to 2,100 miles, 2,100 to 2,200 miles.
Hey,
Hey, absolutely. You can make them possible. But it's not considered a navigable river, so if you want to take your 1,900 mile trek, you might have to do some actual hiking, carrying of kayaks, and otherwise navigating around.
It's a tricky bit.
Favorite wildlife around the river? Did anyone encounter something fun by the river? Mango crane. I like it. Also larger than the runner. Our seventh presenter is Christopher Hayes from the Air Force Research Laboratory Space Vehicle Directorate, presenting to trust or not to trust. That's the question.
Trust is absolutely critical to the construction of any good team, and any lack of trust is immediately evident. Picture an orchestra conductor who insists on playing every musical instrument because he does not believe the musicians can do it well. Well, this is similar to the situation we have between our satellite constellations and their human ground operators. These ground operators are responsible for telling each and every one of these satellites what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, on top of their normal day-to-day activities and mission plan. But what if we could take some subset of these tasks and give them to the satellites themselves? Now, I know what you're thinking. Machines and computers have this annoying tendency to break down right when we need them the most. And this presents a critical paradigm with two key questions. How do we breed trust between our machines, our human ground operators, and the satellite constellation? But also, how to design a satellite constellation to be trustworthy. My research focuses on a traditional mathematical, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to certify trustworthiness of our satellite constellation. I do this by leveraging the satellite constellation's sensing and communication capabilities to form a cooperative team where they can help each other accomplish their mission. Such as, this satellite is about to run into you. You need to move. By leveraging this cooperative team, we were able to migrate these tasks from the human ground operator onto the satellite constellation themselves. But we can also take this information and allow the constellation to make informed decisions about what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, such as they'll be aware of their surroundings. By doing this, we can create a cooperative team of which the ground operator is just the conductor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Our next trivia question. There are 3 rivers in the USA that are longer than the Rio Grande. And so over the next 3 trivia questions, we're going to angle for 1 river each. So Mississippi. Yes. Good call. Saving that one for the next one. The Mississippi River is the second longest in the US at approximately 2,340 miles, which we now know is longer than 1,900 miles. Flowing from Lake Itasca in Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico, it traverses 10 states and is crucial for commerce, while also holding significant cultural and historical importance in American literature and music. Very possibly also saying no France. Okay, marvelous. Our 8th presenter is Adarsh Kumar from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, presenting Farm to Sky, cultivating a cleaner future for air travel.
As we mentioned, we are using airplanes for long distance traveling to save our time. But have you ever felt guilty for traveling to talk about renewable energy on a plane powered by petroleum product? I just had when I was coming for this event. Only US is consuming 65 million gallons jet fuel every day, and it is producing significant air pollution. Do we have any other option? Electric vehicles identified super useful for small distances, but batteries are impractical for aviation purposes. As the plane covers long distances at high altitude, up to the 10 miles in the sky, where the temperature is super low, minus 75 degrees. So we need a renewable hydrocarbon fuel with in a Ca to C16 carbon range having properties like lightweight, high energy density, and low freezing point. So the question is where we can find this new amazing fuel. On a nearby compound? I hope so. America is corn land and Americans are using corn for everything. Do you often think what is happening to the corn stuff? It is going to the trash. But it is a renewable treasure, fully loaded of sugars and perfect source for the jet fuel production. However, converting this goody corn stock into the liquid jet fuel requires multi-step process. So we are degrading these corn stock into the sugar monomer, and then we are removing water from these monomers and making C5 and C6 molecules. To increase the carbon chain length from beyond C8, we have to add at least of these two molecules. But the catch is we cannot add these molecules at any position. These should be in a perfect orientation. So here my job comes in. I am developing catalyst and using that for rearrange these molecules in a perfect orientation for chain elongation. So the good news is by this process we are able to produce lightweight hydrocarbon molecules with low freezing point properties. And these have 15% more energy density than the conventional one. Just assume in near future you are on a plane and you are enjoying your popcorn, which is powered by corn stock. And as a passenger, your carbon footprint will 70% lower. In bonus, this process can boost the rural economy by creating alternate jobs in the agriculture and food production sector. This is the green and vision future we, with full of employment, we proud Americans want to give our coming generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we come back to our trivia question, if you want to be fast off the mark. What are one of the other two rivers that are longer than the Rio Grande? Missouri. Excellent. Missouri is in fact the longest river in the United States, stretching 2,341 miles, edging out the Mississippi by like a mile, from Montana to St. Louis, Missouri. It flows through several states and has been vital for exploration and development of the American West, supporting diverse ecosystems and serving as an important waterway for both transportation and agriculture. It is well known to be a navigable river, unlike the Rio Grande. Marvelous. Our next speaker is Peter Vandenberg from the Air Force Research Laboratory Directed Energy Directorate, presenting Moving Lasers Forward.
My goals. Trying to make sure that lasers don't fire backwards. Now, when I say lasers, maybe you're thinking of an office laser pointer or a cat pointer. And if those were to fire backwards, I mean, the worst that's likely to happen is confused coworkers or a bored cat. Well, I am talking about those kinds of things, but multiplied by a billion. High power lasers. These kinds of lasers are being used in some pretty incredible applications, from igniting fusion reactors to drone warfare defense. If these lasers were to fire backwards, a dissatisfied feline would be the least of your worries. High-power lasers produce optical waves, which are immediately directed into optical fibers, made primarily of glass. When the optical wave becomes strong enough, it can actually cause the glass in these fibers to contract and expand. This movement creates a forward shock wave that pushes some of the optical wave backwards into the body of the laser. In other words, your laser is fired backwards. Our job is to design and evaluate new materials for these optical fibers to help mitigate this effect. By creatively arranging different kinds of glass, we can create guiding structures that are resilient enough to keep this shockwave from forming at the optical densities that we require. This ensures that we can safely use lasers to ignite fusion reactors to create net energy and drone defense networks to protect our troops. There is just one problem. Custom designed optical fibers are expensive and very time-consuming to fabricate. Even just a short meter length can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So in order to evaluate different designs to decide what works best, we either need to spend years and millions of dollars to fabricate each one, or we need a way to predict which designs will be most efficient. That's where I come in. I create computer models that can take a design for a laser and tell you the exact optical wave intensity that will cause the guiding optical fiber to produce this shockwave. Some of these models are relatively quick to run. For more complex designs, the necessary models may take several days to run on a supercomputer. But that's still a lot less time than years, and spending the GDP of a small country to experimentally determine this design. In short, my work ensures that the next time you play with your cat, or the next time you go to a fusion reactor, you can feel confident standing behind lasers. In part to our research, you know they will only fire the way they are intended. Now, if there was only a way we could find to catch the red dot.
Thank you so much, Peter. There's one last river that's longer than the Rio Grande, a little bit farther away from here. Does anyone want to name the third river? Farther away than Colorado. Yukon. Got it. Okay. The Yukon River flows primarily in Canada, the third longest river in the US at about 1,979 miles, flowing through Alaska. Known for stunning wilderness and historical significance during the Klondike Gold Rush, it served as a key route for prospectors in the late 19th century. Although that could not have been fun to navigate at the time. Somewhat different climate and wildfowl in that case, I would imagine as well. Fun fact about roadrunners, coming back to our previous thoughts. The top speed of a coyote is almost 10 miles an hour faster than the top speed of a roadrunner. So your whole childhood, Our next speaker is Alex Bowe from Sandia National Laboratories, presenting Beyond Silicon, the next generation of electronics.
For decades, silicon has reigned supreme, king of the technological age, powering everything from virtual reality to the vast satellite arrays above our heads. But what you might not realize is that the vast majority of United States silicon comes from overseas producers. This presents a national security risk because it creates potential avenues for our adversaries to infiltrate our supply chain and compromise our electronics. For example, just how dangerous supply chain vulnerabilities can be, consider the recent attack on the Hezbollah group in Lebanon, in which their pager supply chain was infiltrated to plant explosives that killed 37 people and injured thousands more. However, right now, we're in the midst of a technological revolution. Devices are shrinking, quantum computing is emerging, and artificial intelligence is demanding faster and more energy-efficient computing systems. These things might spell an end to silicon's reign. And this creates an opportunity for the United States to secure control of the production and supply chain infrastructure for next generation electronics by investing in the new materials that will take us beyond silicon. Now, one candidate for this is a group of materials that are called two-dimensional or 2D materials. These are incredibly thin, sheet-like materials that we can grow or isolate at thicknesses 100,000 times thinner than your average piece of paper. And yet, they have unique properties that make them ideal for computing and memory applications. Unfortunately, their thin nature also makes them extremely sensitive to the surroundings. And so we still have a lot to learn about how they behave in real devices. So a critical part of any electronic device is what's called the contact interface. Now, this is where our semiconductor, like silicon or the 2D material, meets up with metal components so that they can talk and exchange information. So I zoomed in on this critical interface to see what was happening to our 2D material when we put the metal on top of it. And what I saw were some shocking disruptions in the 2D material's properties that spelled bad news for its performance. Upon closer investigation, though, it turns out that the culprit was actually the metal itself, not the 2D material. The layer we had put down was imperfect. And because of its sensitivity, the 2D material was simply mirroring these imperfections, and that was disrupting its properties. So this means that we could go in, treat our metal to align its structure, smooth out that interface, and as a result, we saw dramatically improved communication between our 2D material and the metal. This is a key step forward for the integration of two-dimensional materials for next generation electronics. And so as we continue to look beyond silicon, it's imperative that the United States spearhead developments for new materials like these to establish American independence from foreign manufacturing and make sure that our infrastructure and ourselves are safe from those who would harm us.
Our next trivia question. In which mountain range does the Rio Grande start? Origin mountain range. Oh, yes, now multiple choices again, excellent. San de Cristo Mountains, San Juan Mountains, the Oregon Mountains, or the Sacramento Mountains?
Wow.
San Juan, very good. Thank you. The San Juan Mountains are high and rugged mountain range in the Rocky Mountains in southwestern Colorado and northwestern New Mexico. The Rio Grande drains on the east side of the range. The other side of the San Juans, the western slope of the Continental Divide, is drained by tributaries of the San Juan, the Dolores and Gunnison rivers, which all flow into the Colorado. So if we're thinking about the Colorado, they still get a bit of a shout out. For okay. Running out of Roadrunner facts. I don't know if you've ever heard of Roadrunner, but if you ever wondered what a 1.5 pound velociraptor would sound like, that's pretty much what an angry Roadrunner sounds like. They hiss and click, and you're like, you know, that bird dinosaur thing, absolutely valid. Our 11th speaker is Josh Yaskovitz from Los Alamos National Laboratory, presenting Every Proton Counts, Reducing Beam Loss at the LANL Proton Storage Room.
The latest particle accelerator is a lot like the monorail at Disneyland. The main difference, of course, is that while the monorail will bring people around to different attractions around the resort, the LANL accelerator will bring tiny particles called protons to different experiments. Now, one experiment in particular is a lot like the Royal Theater right in the heart of Disneyland. But there are only a handful of show times throughout the day, so ideally, you would like as many protons as possible to attend each show so that every show can be sold out. To accomplish this, we use a part of the LANL's accelerator called the proton storage ring. It's a massive 90-meter ring around which we accumulate millions and millions of protons before sending them off to the experiment. How do we do this safely? Well, imagine you're a monorail conductor. You've arrived at injector station. Protons will board the train at the first empty train car before you depart on your journey around the ring. And then when you arrive back at injector station, where protons will board the train, and after almost 2,000 turns around the storage ring, a railroad switch is quickly flipped, and the train is sent on its way to the experiment. Now, when protons first get on the train, they'll stay happily in their seats, you can clearly see. But protons don't like staying in their seats for too long. Over time, they'll start to get antsy. Eventually, they'll start bouncing around the train car, and some of them might even fly off through the window. And as you can imagine, those protons cause a lot of problems in the storage room. Flying freely will damage equipment, or even cause it to become radioactive, both of which take a lot of time and money to fix. So our team is currently working on different ways to reduce proton loss in the storage room. My job in particular is to create particle simulations where I actually track protons as they go around the ring and note the locations where they typically get lost. One location in particular is right at injector station, where my simulations show that many protons are just missing the train. By improving the efficiency of the boarding process, we can ensure that more protons make it on the train before departure. My simulations also show that by increasing the size of the beam pipe, that is, increasing the size of the train cars, protons have a lot more space to move around and are much less likely to get lost. So, by reducing proton loss, we can increase the safety and integrity of our monorail while improving the volume and quality of our scientific data. In other words, by reducing proton loss, we can ensure that every proton counts. Thank you.
Our next trivia question. We've discussed how long the Rio Grande is. How many miles of the Rio Grande run specifically through New Mexico? 290, 350, 470, or 510? If you were paying attention on that flight from Colorado, There's a 25% chance of candy in this if you make a random guess. Just throwing that out there.
470.
The Rio Grande flows approximately 470 miles through New Mexico, beginning near Taos along the Colorado border and exiting into Texas near Sunland Park. This vital river traverses diverse landscapes, supporting both ecosystems and communities throughout its journey. We'll segue from Roadrunner fun facts for the moment. Have you ever heard the expression break a leg offered to a presenter? It sounds kind of mean. It actually comes from Shakespeare era, the Globe Theater. People sat in wooden chairs, and because applauding is only so loud, they would bounce up and down in the chairs and rock them back and forth to make extra noise. And so if they were really an enthusiastic audience, they could break the leg off of a chair. And so the idea was get so much applause from the audience that they break a leg off their chairs. So it's not actually ill-wishing your performers. It's hoping that the audience absolutely loves everything. So, cool. Yeah. Harder with metal chips, we'll see. Our materials people can give us some estimates on those exact numbers. We may have to rock the computers a few times and see if we can get all of the electrons in order as well. I wanted to have a table like breaking competition, but they kind of vetoed that, the Q station organizers due to wanting to keep their shares intact and using them again. But perhaps we could give an encouraging round of applause to our electronic system. We'll give it another minute. More fun facts, okay. Shakespeare's plays were actually surprisingly politically timely. We tend to think of him as this historical figure that was out of the moment, but he would tailor his plays very much for specific audiences. So when James VI of Scotland went down south to become James I of England, he was very concerned with not killing the king because James's 1 through 5 had all been assassinated. And he had an interesting hobby of studying ways of identifying witches because, you know, you need a weird hobby back in the 1500s. And so when he assumed the throne, Shakespeare was like, don't kill the king, witches, Macbeth. This is actually where that whole process came from. It was a kind of a political suck-up move that worked very, very well, but then also became kind of the haunted version of the play. So the flip side of saying break a leg instead of something encouraging is to not mention the word Macbeth in theaters. Since we're not in theaters, I think we're probably safe on that front, also because we're doing science instead of plays. But, you know, for our fun, random, hoping that our systems become unhaunted sort of trivia, we can run with the Macbeth option. Yeah. At a certain point, we run the risk of how many PhDs does it take to fix the computer system? You've got quite a few in the room. All right, opening the floor to fun facts regarding Rio Grande and or Shakespeare. Roadrunners? Yes, here.
Where did Shakespeare invent it?
Where was Shakespeare invented?
No, words that Shakespeare invented.
Other words that Shakespeare invented. Was that a question or a?
You see anyone, any knows, I know armpit was invented by Shakespeare.
Yeah,
Or
he
not
was
Shakespeare.
very good at coming up with nomenclature that trickled into the English language. There's about 3 poets that have had a lot of influence on vocabulary that we use. So the next time you mention an armpit to someone, Shakespeare. Excellent. And apparently armpits unstable computers as well. So kudos for that. Our 12th presenter is Noah Lewis from the Air Force Research Laboratory Space Vehicles Directorate, presenting Investigation of Unresolved Orbital Objects, Avoiding the Kepler Syndrome.
Our orbit, Earth's orbit, is complicated and filled with debris such as rocks and dust. And every year we make it more complicated by adding new satellites, spacecraft, and junk. However, this runs the risk as we increase the amount of stuff in our orbit, of stuff either coming back to Earth or ramming into other stuff and other serious hazards. This may eventually lead to what's known as the Kepler syndrome. This is a situation in which there's so much stuff and debris in our orbit crashing into other debris, creating new debris that we essentially cannot operate safely in our orbit. We are essentially locked into our planet. If this happens, we can say goodbye to GPS and communication satellites. Older satellites have followed basic rules and can be easily tracked and predicted. However, new satellites, modern satellites, can often self-propel. These satellites along with space junk, can often have unpredictable orbits. They can also have varying threat levels. This means that in order to protect ourselves, we have to properly monitor these objects so we can assess their overall threat level. For these untracked objects, we have essentially two primary ways to monitor them. The first is radar, which is really only good for lower altitude objects. The second is visual telescopes, which can give us a view of valuable research, valuable real estate, such as the geobelt. However, these visual telescopes provide often noisy and unresolved images. This is where my work comes into play. I'm developing image processing and object detection algorithms that can take these noisy, unresolved images and provide information about the object type, the material composition of the object, and even its origin. This presents the first real step in properly monitoring our orbit and hopefully protecting GPS and communication in satellites and preventing the Kessler syndrome. We've been talking about cleaning up the pollution on Earth and in the sea. It's time to talk about cleaning up space. Thank you.
And thank you, Noah. Our next trivia question. How many miles of the Rio Grande separate Texas from Mexico? 1,120 miles, 1,240 miles, 1,360 miles, or 1,480 miles? Kind of nice increments. I like that. Again, just floating it out there, 1 in 4 chance of candy if we make a random guess.
1240.
Good guess. Yes. Well played. The Rio Grande serves as a natural border between Texas and Mexico, stretching about 1,254 miles, okay, along the Texas-Mexico boundary. In Texas, the river flows through several major cities, including El Paso and Laredo, and plays a crucial role in the region's agriculture and water supply. The river is also significant culturally and historically, as it's been a vital resource for communities on both sides and is central to the area's rich heritage. Our lucky 13th Halloween speaker is Natasha Murphy from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, presenting tipping scales in favor of enzymatic recycling.
Is your favorite old t-shirt made of polyester plastic? Every day, we're all generating a bunch of plastic waste that's just piling up. In fact, in the US alone, this equates to 36 million tons of waste generated every year. And shockingly, as low as 10% of that is making it into a viable recycling process. But as we look to the future, we've got a unique opportunity to design, test, and optimize new recycling technologies to deal with our plastics. And that's exactly where my work comes in. Enzymes are an emerging technology that are capable of taking that t-shirt, breaking it down into its constituent monomers, and then from those building blocks, we can repolymerize and reform a new plastic product, whether that's a new plastic bottle or a new t-shirt. And we can kind of think of this as Pac-Man continues to consume indefinitely, or at least until you lose the game, when a single enzyme can consume 1,000 times its weight in plastic. But there's a massive challenge for the enzymatic recycling process for scale-up. And that challenge is that it uses an awful lot of chemical inputs and it generates a lot of solid waste byproducts.
And one of these chemical inputs is sodium hydroxide. Per kilogram of plastic, you need 3 liters of non-recoverable sodium hydroxide. So we hypothesized that if we swap sodium hydroxide for ammonia, then not only can those Pac-Men run more efficiently on ammonia, but ammonia is a chemical that we can regenerate again and again. And so with this one simple chemical swap and reaction that we are passing to the NREL, we've been able to reduce the salt waste outputs of this process by 84%, the overall fossil fuel usage by 33%, and the greenhouse gas emissions are down by 66%. And so what this means for you and for me is that one day your favorite old t-shirt can be recycled efficiently, reformed, and become someone else's. Thanks.
Our next trivia question. So we got miles of the Rio Grande through New Mexico, but for our NREL people, how many miles of the Rio Grande go through Colorado? 175, 225, 275, or 325?
275.
A little lower than 275, but good guess. So now there's a 30% chance that you'll get that. You said A. Good call. 175. The Rio Grande originates in this, San Juan Mountains of Colorado, near the town of Creed, and flows southward through the state before entering New Mexico. In Colorado, the river is known for its stunning mountain scenery and recreational opportunities, including fishing, rafting, and hiking along the banks. As it meanders through the state, the Rio Grande also supports local ecosystems and provides water for agriculture and communities, making it an essential resource in the region. Our 14th speaker is Daniel Vigo from Sandia National Laboratories, presenting lithium-ion batteries are flammable, but polymer electrolytes might help.
I want to warn you, but you may have parked next to a fire hazard. Last year in New York City, there were 268 lithium-ion battery fires. And when it's an electric car that's catching on fire, it can be very difficult to put out. Often the whole vehicle has to be completely submerged in a tank of water for days, completely extinguished the flames. Commercial lithium-ion batteries contain flammable liquids that form a necessary part of the battery called the electrolyte, which is what allows the lithium ions to move back and forth so we can charge and discharge our batteries. We'd love to replace these flammable liquids with something more stable, but it's extremely difficult to make a good electrolyte for lithium ions. The electrolyte has to dissolve lithium ions. It has to let those lithium ions move quickly, and it needs to be stable. The flammable liquids we use are really good at the first two, but not so much at the third. An alternate class of materials for electrolytes are solid polymers, which dissolve lithium ions really well and are very stable, but they don't allow for that fast lithium motion. In fact, lithium ions are 10,000 times slower in a solid polymer compared to a pure liquid. So not every material is perfect, but what if we could combine them to create a new material that has the best of both worlds? That's what my team is doing. To do so, we're going to use a special type of polymer that self-assembles and forms nanoscale channels that run through the material. We're then going to take a small amount of the liquid and insert it into these channels to swell them and create highways for our lithium to move through. My team was able to synthesize these materials that are 80% polymer and 20% liquid, and we found that these highways do form, in part through high accuracy molecular simulations that I've done. Unfortunately, we still don't have that fast lithium motion we need. The lithium ions are still 10,000 times slower than the pure liquid. So what's going wrong? My simulations reveal that there's groups on the polymer that like to attach onto those lithium ions and slow them down. You can think of these groups as like traffic cops sitting by the side of the highway and slowing down traffic. lithium ions are trying to go fast. So with this insight, we're making changes to the polymer and liquid chemistry to try and mitigate the impact of these traffic cloud groups. And so far, we've seen a factor of 100 increase in the mobility of lithium ions, which means we're only a factor of 100 off of the pure liquid. So we've made a pretty significant improvement with these new materials, and these materials have significantly reduced quantities of flammable liquid compared to existing lithium ion batteries. This is a critical step to improving their safety and preventing the fires that can occur in cars or your phone or any other mobile device that has a lithium ion battery. We hope that these new materials will thus be an on-ramp to a safer future where you have to drive past this.
That was magnificent. You did wonderful, and you really, really good to it. Thank you for sharing. You have a really difficult choice ahead. So now it's on you for the People's Choice Award. There's QR codes on the table. You can scan the QR code to your phone or enter the web address to submit. Oh, or you can scan it on the screen. It's that one. Okay, never mind. The table ones won't work. Use this one. Updated information. So QR code, you can vote for your favorite presentation. And there's a special award for that People's Choice Award. So if you were not envying the judges, it was a very, very difficult decision. Now you get to be difficult too. We'll take a short break to allow you to submit your votes. The judges and organizers will do some math, work out the winners. Feel free to take a little bit of a break, stand, mingle, and we'll call everyone back in just a bit to announce our winners. And one more time, thank you everyone. You did such a wonderful job presenting, and thank you audience for contributing your own wisdom and insight to our Rio Grande Fun Fest.
They are all amazing. Yeah. You did great.
Do you know where that's presenting the awards?
I hope right there.
It's right there on the carpet.
I hope.
Okay, cool.
I don't know.
All right. Sure. Would it be okay if I sit up and stand and?
Of course. Yeah. I think so. Once you set it up, I'll let you know. And I can. Oh, they said they're gonna have a work then. So the picture's gonna be right over around the wall.
We're going on the screen. Here's our screeners. This basically both, we have 1 minute. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Excuse me, I know the conversations are fantastic and the lunch has that magnificently distracting smell, so let's announce our winners and then we can move on to the lunch stage of the proceedings. So first, can we get all of the presenters to come back up here just one more time? We're gonna take everyone's photo and cheer madly for all of your bravery and contributions to a really fun night. So, all the presenters.
Sorry, man.
Also, thank you so much, Dr. Weeks, for all your work with us.
Yeah, they got me. Well, zero. It's all for feeling. Yeah.
And it does.
Take one for the.
Oh, one more. Perfect, thank you.
Our third place award to San Diego National Labs, Michelle Bester. Second place award to Emerald Aaron Bales. Our first place, also to Emerald Natasha Murphy. Thank you so much. Showing just how close all of these scores came. Our People's Choice Award goes to AFRL Christopher Hayes. That makes our overall lab team winner this year, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Yes. Good sponsors, thank you so much. Welcome to the Rio Grande Research Clinic. You can look their speaker. What up your spear? Yeah, oh, and you're a good person. Yes. And we could not have successfully executed this event without a lot of individuals who are listed in the slide. So our tech team, the computer people, everyone who did the magnificent staging. A last round of applause to all of our organizers, judging panel, facilities team, sponsors, and the people who made lunch. And as the river might say, that's all, folks. Thank you for the 2024 Rio Grande Research Plan. You're very welcome to stay for lunch, to connect with fellow researchers and attendees. This is a really great chance to talk about all those cool projects you just heard and find out when it will be coming to real life near you. Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you all.
Big organizers, so I had to take a picture. Organizers, judges, and presenters, please come to the front for photos.